Hi, and welcome to question 10 of the 2024 paper 1 of the ordinary level maths. So question 10 is the last question on this paper. 10 part A and 1A reads, in 2023, Joseph had a gross annual income of €48,000. Now, from your gross income, okay, you're going to have deductions. So he pays income tax. So income tax is being taken away from that. He pays PRSI, pay-related social insurance is taken away, and the hated USC is taken away. So that is his net income. Okay. Now that calculation, I'm going to show on the next page, is 48,000. Take away the 7,650. Take away the 1,920. Take away the 1,407. So he's a net income of 37,023. That's it. So let's keep that answer. 37,023 euro. Now, part two says, hence, write his net annual income as a percentage of his gross annual income. That seems really easy. So 37,023 as a percentage of his gross income, which is 48,000. And the way to convert to a percentage is always to multiply by 100. Now, the answer there I got in the notes was 77.13, but it says round to the nearest percent. The 1 is what matters. 1 is less than 5, so the number before it stays the same. So it's 77%. Okay, pretty straightforward. I'm sure we'll pay for that in a second. 10 part B part 1 says the two income tax rates in Ireland in 2023 are given in the table below. So the first 40,000 you earn, you pay tax at 20%. Anything over that, you pay tax at 40%. It says that Olivia's gross annual income is 34,000 and her annual tax credit is 3,550. Find her net annual income. So Olivia is only paying tax at the 20%. So she owes 20% in tax, which should be 34,000 multiplied by, I can go 20% button on the calculator, I think. Yeah. So that's 6,800. So that's how much tax she owes. Now, a tax credit is where the government say, because of your circumstances, you don't owe all the tax we say you're due. We give you a tax credit. Now, you can take those numbers away. So that's 6,800. Take away 3,550. That gives me, so the amount of tax that she owes is 3,250. So what's her net annual income? Well, if her income was 34,000, she only owes 3,250 in tax. Okay, her net income should be the difference of those two figures, which is 30,750. And that's the answer. So lots to that question, but again, doable. Now, part B, part 2 says same criteria. Caroline's gross annual income is 50,000. Her annual tax credit is 3,550, so the same thing. Find how much annual income tax she pays. So her 50,000 can be split into 40,000, which is paying at 20%, and then 10,000, which is paying at 40%. So the total annual electricity and broadband, you could call that like T, I guess. So A is equal to T times D over 365 times 0.3. Now you could mess with that and make it simpler and just whatever. These two terms will multiply by the top. So you could express that as, let's see now. I should better off leaving it the way it is. So it says D is the number of days work from home. Part 1 says Anne's annual electricity bill was 1,950 and her broadband was 400. So the total price there was 9, 13, 2,350. So that's T. Okay. She worked from home for 120 days. So D is 120. Find how much tax relief she can claim. So there's three unknowns in this model. Okay. I know two of the three things, so I can swap them out. 2350 times 120 over 365 times 0.3. Now that's a calculator job, which I'm sure I've done here. I got 231.78. Zero. Now it came out as a zero, which is suspicious, but zero would round the number prior to it. It wouldn't round it. Zero is less than 5. So I get an answer of 231.78. So fairly okay. You were given all the information you need, and if you fall back on, you can only ever solve an equation of one unknown. So if there's three unknowns, like in this particular model, you have to be given information. So can you decode that? Can you decipher what they're saying enough to be able to get the figures? And if you can, you just throw them in, put it through the calculator, get out the other end. If you can't decipher that, is there any strategies you can put in place to help with that? Which is where the reading the words, trying to even just get the low partial, get the attempt, will bring your success up in terms of mocks, whatever, actual exams. So that's C part 1. Now C part 2 says Tara also worked from home for a number of days. Tara's total electricity bill and broadband bills were 2,250. She claimed tax relief of 135 for work from home. Calculate how many days she worked from home. So I think it was T. I called it T times D over 365 multiplied by 0.3. So we know that A is 135. We know that T, which again I gave it that initial, is 2250. We're looking for the number of days. So the three unknowns, do we know two of the three? Yes, we do. So if I just fill the numbers in, now we're going to have to do some algebra. Okay. 365 multiplied by 0.3. Now doing this by hand, I can see, well, those two things can be multiplied together. So what would that be? 2250 multiplied by 0.3. Okay, it gives me 675. So 135 is equal to 675 times D over 365. Now this 675 is being multiplied on the right, so if it moves across to the left, it'll be divided. Okay, it'll be 135 over 675 is equal to D over 365. Now I want D on its own, so I need to get rid of this 365. So one of the simpler ways of doing that would be to multiply the top by 365. I'm allowed to do that as long as I do the exact same thing to the far side. The 365s on the right will cancel, and left with D is equal to this calculation, which should be the same as the answer here. Okay, my answer here is wrong. I don't know where I'm getting this 135. I must have had a brain fart. So I'll just have to do the calculation out here. So it's 135 times 365, and the bottom is 675. 675. Yeah, I got 73. So 73 days. Now that's not unreasonable. Like, she got a lower amount of tax relief than the other person, which is 231. So it should be less days. So there's nothing causing me to have an issue, other than my stupidity here. So that's D part C part 2, which is the end of the paper. Right, tax can be a tricky question, but if you're having a bad time, always be aiming for the low partial. Some tricks to get that would be to take some numbers away, but also to try use the answer from the previous part if the questions are linked. So I'll stop it there. So that's question 10. As always, if you want to copy the notes I'm working off, just send me an email at shanetroy@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to get access to more playlists, and see you on paper 2. Now that calculation there, 40,000 multiplied by 20%, which is the same thing as 0.2. So she owes 8,000 at 20%, and then 40% of 10,000 is 4,000. You can do the calculation on the calculator. So she owes 12,000 in income tax. But like before, that 12,000, she's given a tax credit of 3,550. So you take those figures away. So that's 12,000. Take away 3,550. That gives me an answer of 8,450 euro, which is my final answer. Okay, so that's B part 2. Now, B part 3 says the personal tax credit for an employee in Ireland in 2023 is 3,550. Find the greatest amount of income an employee can earn before paying any income tax. Okay. Hint, the lowest income tax rate is 20%. So in a way, what figure by 20% is going to equal 3,550? If you earn more, you're going to actually have to pay tax. If you only earn 3,000, or you only earn enough that when taxed comes out to 3,550, well, then you don't actually pay any tax because the tax credit gives it all back to you. So this is an equation of one unknown. Okay, it's just a matter of solving. So the 20% is multiplied on the left. So if I divide the whole left side by 20%, which I'm allowed to do, I'm allowed to do that as long as I do the exact same thing to the far side. Now, the reason I did that is the 20% here and the 20% here will cancel, and you're left with x is equal to whatever this number is. Now, that number is a calculator job. So 3,550 divided by 20%, I could do 0.2. That's giving me x is equal to 17,750 euro. So if she earns any more than, or the person earns any more than that, they're going to actually have to give the government money. Okay. Right, that's B part 3. That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That's the answer I got in the notes. So part 4, 10B part 4, says in 2024, the amount of income being taxed at the 20% rate was increased from 40,000 to 42,000. Work out how much less income tax a person earning more than 42,000 would pay in 2024 compared to 2023 due to this increase. God, I hate to leave it here sometimes. So many words. Now I've got the answer here. I didn't put in a blank page, so I'm gonna have to fix that after. But the first thing I can see there to get the low partial is there's a difference in two numbers, so I'm going to take them away. So 42,000 take away 40,000 gives me 2,000. And then if I read through the last statement again, work out how much less income tax a person earning more than 42,000 would pay in 2024 compared to 2023 due to this increase. So in 2023, they were paying tax at 40% on that 2,000, but in 2024, that changed. So we need to know both figures. So 2,000 by 40% is 800, which is what a person in 2023 would have had to pay. But in 2024, because of the change in the budget, whatever, it's only 20%, which is 400. So it's the difference in those two numbers. 800 take away 400, it gives you 400. So that's very tricky. Now, I know the solution looks fairly simple when it's done in front of you, but there's a lot of words there to understand. I find, and this has happened multiple times when doing this exam paper, that I sometimes read the question fast or not carefully. I don't spend time focusing in on what the important information is, and I answer the question. I do it like it's correct mathematically, but it's not what I was being asked. It's a personal flaw of mine, and I'm sure I'm not alone. One strategy I found is to just read the question more than once, underline important words, write them out on the page, take the time to understand what's being asked, and then I do it. I'm just much more successful. So that's B part 4. And next we have 10C part 1. So I'll read through. An employee who works from home may qualify for tax relief on their electricity and broadband bills. The amount of tax relief such an employee can claim is called A, which is equal to the total annual electricity and broadband bills, which I'm going to call T, times D over 365 times 0.3. Now I could combine them together and create something a bit more elegant, but we'll read the part 1. It says Anne's annual electricity bill was 1,950 and broadband bill was 400. So 1950 and 400 gives me 2350. So that's T. Okay. Then the number of days she worked from home was 120 days in the year. So it says find out how much tax relief she can claim. Now, if you notice in this model or this equation, there's 3 unknowns. I can't solve an equation of 3 unknowns. Nobody can. But if I'm given more information, can I end up in a different situation? And I'm given T and I'm given D. So now I have a situation whereby I only have one unknown, okay, which is A. Now that's a calculator job, so I can just use the answer here in the next page. That's the calculation. I got an answer of 231.780 from the calculator, but the question says round to the nearest cent, okay, which is the 8. 0 is less than 5, so the number before it stays the same. So I got an answer of 231.78. Now, part 2 here says Tara also worked from home for a number of days. Okay, so that's D. So we don't know what D is. We know that her total electricity and broadband bills were 2,250 and her tax relief was 135. So our model again was A is equal to T times D over 365 times 0.3. Now our unknowns are going to be a little bit different. Okay, so our unknown here is the value of D. So we need to manipulate this equation in order to be able to solve it. Okay, so I've done it out in the notes here. So I'll flick onto them. So when I do this calculation here, okay, basically by multiplying the 2250 by 0.3 and dividing by 365, I end up with this simpler fraction, 135 times D, all divided by 73. Now it just looks a bit weird because the 135 here and the 135 are so similar, but it just looks that way. Now to get rid of the 73 on the bottom, I'm multiplying the top by 73 because they will cancel each other out. If I do it one side, I have to do it to both sides. So I end up with a situation 135 times 73, which is the same thing as 9,855, is equal to 135D. Now the way to get rid of that 135 in front of the D is to divide by 135. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other, and I got a value of 73. So in 73 days of work from home, she qualified for that tax relief. It seems legit. In the first scenario there, the person worked 120 days and got 231. This person is getting less money, 135, so you would expect her to be less days, and 73 is less than 120. So it seems legit. Don't see any reason why it isn't. So that should be the end of question 10, and that's the end of paper 1. So as always, if you want to copy the notes I'm working off, just send me an email at shanetroy@gmail.com. Like and subscribe to get access to more playlists, and see you on paper 2.